Our best short range model is now telling us who could see snow this weekend. Temperature records are about to be smashed across the southeast, and a stratospheric warming event is ahead. This could lead to a very cold and snowy December for many. It's November 8th, 2025. Let's get into the weather updates. I first want to start off by taking a look at our HRRR model, which is generally considered the best short range model for snowfall. We'll start up here in the north central region. As you can see, our storm's already beginning to dive down into the northern plains, and as we move through today, we're going to see this low pressure beginning to push down through South Dakota into Nebraska and Iowa. Now, a lot more of this is showing up as snow than it was before, so who knows, maybe even Des Moines and Omaha could see more accumulation than was originally expected. This system will continue to push off to the east as we go through today, making its way towards the Great Lakes region tonight. Now, this is when our upper level low will be sinking, turning a lot of this rain on the northern side of the system into snow. The big question is, how early does that cold air get there? Because if it arrives early enough, it may try to turn this very cold rain into snow for Chicago. Right now, the heat that's coming off of Lake Michigan wants to keep that as rain, but there are some models that suggest that the cold air is going to be there in time. I think Chicago is going to have to get snow on the back end as this system moves through and you start to get that northeasterly flow that pulls that lake effect snow over the city. So here we go, getting into Sunday morning, we're starting to get a little bit of snow down into Indiana and then into Ohio. Now, this is very interesting as well, because the timing of this is also going to determine, is this region right here getting 5 to 6 inches of snow, or are we seeing a dusting to an inch because that rainfall doesn't transition over to snowfall quick enough? The HRRR, though, does like a lot of this to transition into snow on the back end, as you can see here. So it's putting a decent amount of snow into potentially southeastern Michigan and then northwestern Ohio here. And then as we move forward in time, we're starting to see some snow falling in western upstate New York. And then we're getting this lake effect on the back end. Here we go. We got our northerly into our northwesterly winds beginning to pull all that lake effect down into Indiana and then trying to pull that moisture down into Kentucky and out towards Appalachia. This is going to be as we push towards Sunday night and into Monday morning. Look at all this moisture being pulled down and dumped into the Appalachian mountain range. There is a newer development with the Euro, which I'll show you in a little bit, that suggests some of this moisture is going to try to squeeze over the mountains and maybe put a dusting into the lowlands of Virginia and North Carolina. And pushing through Sunday out in the northeast, most of this is rain. Unless you're in the higher elevations, you will get some snow. And if you are along the Great Lake region, like I said, as this low pressure moves off to the northeast and this cold air sinks in behind, this will transition to snow for low elevation as well. These are the latest snow totals from the HRRR, but I do think the snow totals will go up a little bit down here because the run hasn't completed. We're only going up really to Monday morning, and we're going to continue to see these flakes flying and some of this moisture heading off into the southeast as we push through Monday morning. So the run isn't completely loaded yet, but as you can see here, it does want a couple inches into Chicago. It is thinking maybe 2, 3, 4 inches into Des Moines. We may try and get a dusting to an inch into Omaha. It's going to be really close here. It's not showing yet a ton of snow piling up along the western shore of Michigan, although again, because the run's not complete, but I do think this is interesting. Potentially a few inches, maybe even up to 5 inches, stretching from Detroit down into northwestern Ohio. I think this is going to be on the lower end because it's going to be a little bit more rain than snow in the beginning. But look, even on this incomplete run, this is a good amount of snowfall for these regions early in November. Look at our 850 millibar layer as we move through the next few days. We are expecting record-breaking temperatures down in the southeast. I also wanted to point out something. I want you to watch this region right here. You can see that spin, that vorticity, that's going to try to pull this moisture down into Kentucky, Tennessee, and then into Appalachia. It looks like we may have record lows for this time of year through portions of the Carolinas, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Florida. So pretty much all of the southeast. And look at Florida. Florida is just smashing records left and right. And by the way, these are not feels like temperatures. These are actual temperatures. It's going to be cold enough to snow in Florida in early November. Do I think it's going to snow? No, but hey, if the right storm system was there, technically you could get some flakes here. And by the way, look at our high temperatures on Tuesday in Florida. These are also records. We have a lot of highs that are barely going to touch the 60s in early November in Florida. For some of you up north, you're like, well, that's nice and warm. I promise you, I lived in Florida for over 20 years. That is extremely cool for November. A lot of times Florida doesn't even start feeling winter until late December into January. Getting back to this weekend storm, I wanted to take a look at our European ensemble probability of snowfall map. If you're watching this video and you want to know what the European model thinks your probability of getting an inch or more of snowfall is, pause the video and look for your area. If you're in the red, it gives you a 100% chance of seeing an inch or more of snow. If you're in that yellow to orange, it's more like a 50 to 70%, and then that blue up to the light green is more like a 10 to 40%. Some things to note here: it does give Chicago over a 100% chance to see an inch or more of snow. Indianapolis, it gives a pretty good chance. We're talking about over a 50% chance of seeing an inch of snow, and then has the majority of Ohio and an over 40% chance to see an inch of snow across the state. You can see there in eastern Kentucky, the chances are pretty high as well, and we have a 100% chance for receiving receiving more of an inch of snow through the southern Appalachia region. We're talking eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina mountains, up through western Virginia, and then into West Virginia. Also note Cleveland, Erie, and western upstate New York, your chances are very high. And pushing up to the northeast, well, the farther you are away from the coast, the higher your chances are clearly. This right here is the latest national blend of models. Why do I like showing this? Well, of course, because it takes all the models and averages it out. I will say the national blend a lot of times underestimates snow in some areas. I would hope it's not underestimating snow up here in north central to northwestern Indiana, because it's thinking you guys could get over a foot of snow. But look, it's being pretty generous down here in the Ohio Valley. And as I said earlier, if you're hoping for snow east of the Appalachian Mountain Range, the European Ensemble does have some members that put snow out here. You can see it's thinking just a dusting, maybe to a quarter inch of snow. Some of you won't see it. I think some of you will see flakes flying though. Okay, so after this storm moves out, what's happening? Let's push forward a little bit in time. So this is after next Monday, Tuesday, then we get into Wednesday. We continue to see this cold flow out east, potentially more clipper systems putting snow up into the UP of Michigan and then into New England. And we continue that ridging out west as we get into Thursday and Friday. But here comes a big storm system for the west. High elevation snow, low elevation rain. Your temperatures are going to drop a little bit out here because of the moisture, but for the most part, it's still going to be pretty warm out west with a continued flow of cold air for many people out east. Pushing into next weekend, some of that moisture tries to get out into the Rockies, and we have another clipper system headed towards New England. I said it, I believe it was last video, but New England just looks extremely cold and extremely snowy, at least in the high elevations for the month of November. So we continue here through next weekend. Maybe we have a storm system pushing off through the plains, but we're not seeing a big collapse of the polar jet, which some of our teleconnections are suggesting. We do see the potential for a couple more snowstorms as we push out through this model in the upper Midwest, and then trying to take place across the plains here and then through the Ohio Valley. So that'll be interesting to watch. The Euro actually has this a lot warmer than the GFS does, but again, I do think moving forward, we're going to see our jet a little bit farther south than the models may suggest. I made a post the other day talking about how cold December could be. Let's talk about why. Here's our stratospheric 10 millibar height anomaly, and watch what happens as we get into mid-November and towards the end of November. We see a large stratospheric warming event. This is what disrupts our stratospheric polar vortex, and when you hear about these big Arctic blasts, these record-breaking historic cold events, it's when you have a breakdown of your stratospheric polar vortex, not just your tropospheric polar vortex. The coldest air on the planet is up in the stratosphere in the northern hemisphere. This air on average is even colder than the air above Antarctica, and that has to do with the geography of the land around the Arctic in the northern hemisphere. So when we see warm anomalies up here, we understand that that force field of wind or that low pressure that holds in all of this freezing stratospheric air is probably going to slow, and it's likely going to release that air into the lower latitudes. Typically, when this breaks down, you don't get an instant release of cold air. There's a little bit of a lacking event, sometimes a week or two. So if we see these warm anomalies building up at the end of November, you can bet in December, we're probably going to get a very negative AO, a very negative Arctic oscillation that's going to try and set December temperature and maybe even snowfall records. And what happens as we get into December as well? On our European weekly, we see constant blocking over Greenland, and we see troughing continuously down into the eastern US. These are signs, like I said, of an extremely cold and potentially snowy east this December. Depending on how big this breakdown of the polar vortex is, we could see the west get involved here too. There's a possibility we just see a very cold west to east coast for the month of December. I appreciate you guys watching this video. If you like this type of content, don't forget to throw me a follow or sub and hit that notification bell. I do make posts like this every single morning, and I live stream every morning as well, right after I post the morning forecasts and outlooks. I also have an awesome weather Discord. The link is in the description of every single YouTube video, and you can find daily weather updates in there, tons of weather enthusiasts. So consider becoming a part of the climate crew. It's a great place to come and hang out. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream.